Episode 3. Chuck the Comic Guy podcast. The dramatic draw out there. I had actually meant to do this earlier this week, but there were some distractions, and I just had to take a break for a second, pause, refocus, recenter, and what I was going to discuss, that initial draft of doing episode 3, probably wasn't ready for it yet anyway. I think I got a better episode 3 planned out this week, in which you get 2 episodes this week because I did one earlier. I don't know what I'm going to do with the format right now. It's just kind of all over the place. I'm kind of just getting inspired by what's going on in comic books, entertainment, media, and if something entices me to hit the record button and start recording whatever yapping I'm going to do about it, then that's when you're going to get it. So episode 3, it is Friday night going into Saturday morning here in Michigan. It's late. I just got done watching the James Gunn Superman, the new one that came out recent, and I dug it. I didn't catch it in theaters. I don't rush to a theater for movies anymore. It's not like, it's just, I want to be that diehard that wants to get into like the first or 2 week opening period, and I know I'm bad if I don't spend the money and support the movie, and then it looks like it doesn't do good when, fans like me don't go see it. But then for what the experience at theaters is anymore, it's just overpriced. So if they make it more affordable to, and the problem being is that they have made it, when I was a kid, you'd get a blockbuster, like one blockbuster or 2 a year. And then there would just be like a lot of just random rom-coms or action flicks or whatever in between all that. And so you get like your winter and your summer blockbuster that's like the go-to, you have to see it. And so it now there's so many blockbusters, there's so many things you have to see, and they try to spread them out throughout the year, and it just, like, you don't want to keep spending that kind of money monthly or every 2 months on a movie at a theater where you're going to enjoy the experience, but then you don't know whether you're going to get hit with like the random crying kid or the obnoxious person behind you or the person that's digging through their snacks and their popcorn throughout the movie, or someone just like, someone's going to be in the stands or in the seats that's just going to kind of, it happened to me when I seen Ghostbusters Afterlife. I had to get a refund and come back the following week, and it was just like, it ruined the mood. So, but back in the day, you'd get to see just, I don't know, you'd see the movie. If you saw it in theater, then it was in theaters for like 3 months, okay? And then it finally died down, and they opened up the slot for a new movie coming in, and then it took like 3 months for the DVD or the VHS to hit. So it took 6 months from release date to getting it in your home. And now it's every 2 weeks. It's ready to go streaming or rental, and you just feel like, why did I spend the extra bit of money to see it first when I could just wait 3 weeks or 4 weeks and it's almost on demand, and what's the point? So that's why I caught it now, bought the DVD. So I supported it in that way. I love having physical media. I do collect a ton of just things that I can handle and show to people or look at when I'm bored. And so that's my support, is buying the digital media, at least doing my part. So I bought it. It was a good price, like $10 on DVD, and watched it, and I was entertained by it. It did have parallels in the way the cinematography and some of the action sequences were very much like taken from Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, just little bits and pieces here. So that was just kind of to be expected because James Gunn, you can't not use what worked for you at Marvel and not use it at DC for the same effect. But I dug it, and every one of those, like any Marvel or DC book, has crossed over the same type of action sequences for their own comic pages. So, yeah, so that's that. There's been some news stories that have kind of broken throughout the week, and I jotted a couple of them down. One of them being that Image is starting to release information about new books coming out, new series that are going to be released in comic form, and one of them being Hammer Fist, which they were teasing for a few days there on social media. Like, guess the guy, like they had the artwork, but they didn't give the name out, and they wanted you to guess what a good comic book name would be for the character based on like a flaming fist that was being shown and the mask. And but based on the details of Hammer Fist, it's very much kind of a gritty, raw, street level superhero that has actually got a checkered past. It sounds like he had come from basically drug addiction and being a deadbeat father, very much like the series Shameless, kind of almost if you took that character and made him a superhero. And he has this fist that he has to instill some power into it to, I guess it's like it involves love or whatever. So that was one of Image's comic previews that's coming soon. I can't remember the exact date that's coming out, but it should be at the local comic shops pretty soon. And then Matthew Lillard was announced for, speaking of Superman, because now I'm really excited and it kind of made me want to watch this to see what's coming next, that Matthew Lillard would be in Man of Tomorrow. I don't know what part's not been given or no details emerged about what he's going to be playing in Man of Tomorrow, but Matthew Lillard is going to be in the next Superman film, so that's pretty cool. Kind of riding on that wave of success that he's had, where he just has become kind of like this top tier good guy in the industry, and I totally dig Matthew Lillard as a person. There's so many different movies that I've seen with him in it, and just I think he as a person is way outweighs anything he's done as a character. Not that that's taken away from his talent or anything. I'm just saying that when you hear interviews with him talking about his love and appreciation for fans, I mean, you know that is totally from the heart. And I'm just going to take a second to say, because I should have started the show with this, and I'm going to start ending the show like this as well. Thank you to anybody who's listening to this right now and following my TikTok and Instagram, which is under the same name, Chuck the Comic Guy. I love the input and the feedback that anybody can provide me, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now without knowing that there's someone that can appreciate it and that can relate to what I'm sharing with them and can, even correct me if I'm wrong on things or, whatever. So, big thank you to anybody that's a friend or follower on my social media. And but yeah, Matthew Lillard is truly he's right up there. I mean, him and Keanu are like the two. They should just do a buddy cop movie together. Like, it would be so entertaining. And they'd be like, they should just, okay, my pitch, here's a pitch already, is for Matthew Lillard and Keanu Reeves to be in a cop buddy movie called Good Cop, Good Cop. Boom. Green light that. And it will, if it happens, I willed it. Someone heard my podcast and heard it and said, this needs to happen. So if you hear the podcast and you hear me say that, start spreading the word, bring people my podcast, and let's have Good Cop, starring Keanu Reeves and Matthew Lillard. That's my hot take of the week. So there's one more, and it's actually something I had not had in my show notes because this is from earlier this week, but Marvel in their latest news bit and trying to bring themselves a little bit more to the top of the news chain. They've announced they did a teaser poster for something coming in the fall, and it just said midnight. It's coming fall of 2026. So a lot of people are speculating they're going to do something maybe involving Morbius, maybe involving Ghost Rider, maybe the Midnight Suns, something along that dark route where it's going to be kind of more. Other people are saying it's going to be like maybe they're going to go with like horror routes of their characters since it's close to Halloween. I don't know. Marvel is so full of shticks lately. It's just I mean, new comic book day. I bought Jubilee, the new release that just came out with her at the forefront. She's got a new series. I don't know how long it's going to last. I kind of thumbed through it. I haven't given a chance to read it yet, but I probably will do so this weekend. The cover looks phenomenal. It looks great. I've always liked Jubilee as a character from the X-Men. And so that's just another way that they're doing the whole, just like everybody, we need another number one and we need to make money off that number one, which I fell right into that trap, but I have a soft spot in my heart for X-Men titles. And I've always been a back issue guy. I'm not really into the modern stuff, but I'm trying to embrace it. I'm trying to stay up with the times. I'm trying to show my support somewhere to all brands, whether it be Image, Marvel, DC. I bought new books of just about every major player in the comic industry so far, Vault Comics, and so trying to not knock it until I try it. And so there's certain things that have come out and it's been great, and some things have just been kind of like, yeah, like the artwork already in Jubilee, the cover was great, and then you get deeper into it and it starts becoming some of the artwork that, and I'm not saying I'm a great artist or I'm an artist at all. I just have my preference of artists, and it seems like to me, I've loved the 60s to 90s, and by mid 95, 96, 97 era, a lot of the aesthetics that came with the book started kind of changing to where I just it looked a little too cartoony to me. The art styles wasn't really, the layouts weren't that great to me, and it just seemed kind of like just splashing a whole bunch of stuff together and trying to make it work. And so there's been a little bit of like the up and downs, the ebbs and flows of art getting good again and then going back down. It all depends on who's moving around in studios, who's doing the inking and all that stuff, or the line work, pencil work, and you sometimes just things do come back together and look great, and then people move on, and then it just goes back to what it was, what they didn't like. So yeah, I'm going to try to give that a read this week and may have a review of it for the next podcast. So, my original episode was going to be, my original episode 3 that I conceived earlier in the week was going to be about more of the movie universe between the two studios, at least the only two that are really contributing anything at this point. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna go away from that route and actually discuss something that had been more in mind recently, was just collecting in general. I had posted a lot of random stuff of what I've collected in years. I mean, 30 years plus of collecting things, mainly comics. But I'll post whatever, really, that if it's cool and fun to look at and reminiscent of something that's close to me or someone else that enjoys that kind of thing. And so I wanted to kind of just touch base on the collecting aspect of comics and collecting in general, because I'm a huge collector. of things. I've got no room for things I've collected in a small house, and I've gone through purges of collecting. I've rebought things that I've heavily invested into and sold at one point and needed it again. Um, it's just kind of that roller coaster of hunting, whatever it is that you like. And so with the comic books, comics are nice because they're thin, and if you can keep it under control, you can have a small collection that looks big, right? You can have a bookcase that's full, or 5 short or long boxes that stack somewhere in a corner or in an office, and someplace that seems just like it's not eating up a lot of space, even though it kind of does. So my one bookcase right now, 4 or 5 shelves are full, and they're getting a little tight, and I'm starting to get worried that I'm squishing the books a little too hard in there and stacking them in ways to make it work. And I have one free shelf, but then I use that shelf for other purposes. So that's the issues, that the problems that collectors run into. If it's not financial, it's a space thing. And then I've known collectors that have just stashed this stuff in storage units because they have it. It's just not where they can access it unless they have to get a key and go to some place and pay a fee to get in there. And I don't want to ever go that route because that just seems scary to me. I mean, knowing that, just like, I like knowing where my things are at. When I was collecting comics in the late 80s and early 90s, I mean, they were cheap. They were just for fun. It was to kind of just, there was kind of a little bit of a FOMO, a fear of missing out factor there, because certain comics would hit racks or bookshelves, or shelves and store shelves, and you seen it and you kind of thought, yeah, that makes sense to me. I want it. X-Men 1 Volume 2, that one was probably the one of that one book of that time, or those 5 covers of that time, that really stand out to where I remember where I was at when I bought those books. There's a big box store here in the Detroit area, and it's kind of outreaching as well, called Meijer, and they're like the Walmart competitor, the Kroger. And so at one point in the early 90s, they had like a video game aisle that was also kind of like a collector's aisle. So it had like sports cards and comic books, and it was my favorite aisle because it was super cool and fun and somewhat expensive for the video game aspect. And so they would, I mean, back when comics were in this huge, like, big blow up period, it was kind of very much similar to that of the sports card market in the 80s and 90s, and what they refer to as the junk wax era. So they just, you didn't have things like we have now, where it was at the tip of your finger. You can get access to it and immediately, and you just, everything's pre-programmed to pay, like PayPal, whatever. You had to go out and be physically active to get things. And so, I mean, you can still be that way with like Pokemon and current sports cards and even comic books, but there was so many less things to enjoy. I mean, even though we were bombarded with action figures and cards and toys, they were so plentiful that you would easily just kind of jump sporadically between all 3 of them, or video games, and you'd find yourself every week at a store buying something of physical value. So it was easy for brands like Marvel, DC, Toy Biz, and Playmates, and all these different brands that offered something that were for a teen or young adult mind to just have. It's just like a playground, And so I remember being at the Meijer cool aisle. There was a 5-pack. They would sell the X-Men Volume 1s, Volume 2 issue 1s in 5-packs, in a bagged 5-pack, just like they would do the same bags for like X-Force 1, or with the cards and all that stuff. And there it is, just X-Men. And this is after like a few issues had already been out. that's how many issues were being sold. There wasn't a reprint value or fourth printing or third. I mean, they were just shelling these things out because they would sell, and kids were. Plus, there was also the trading card value to, or the trading card element to the comic books that reciprocated sales between them. So, what really got me into comic books was, I think there was this really weird mix of, I don't know what came first, like the chicken or the egg, right? Was it the trading card, the action figure, or the comic book? And before even the animated series came out for X-Men or some of these cartoons that were starting to tie in, you either had to like find one or the other or the other. So I was in fourth grade. That would have been close to like the 1989-ish period, 90. And kids were, or no, it was sixth grade. I'm sorry. Yeah, fifth or sixth grade, because there was this big thing, just like there kind of is now with cards in schools, where you can't bring that kind of thing into school, like Pokemon cards. They'll get stolen, and it turns into a whole debacle with teachers and principals. And that was like that with Marvel trading cards. I am not kidding you. There was the 260 plus card set for Marvel Universe. There was series 1, 2, 3, and 4 is where I like, they kind of just teetered off, but 3, 1, 2, and 3 are the best sets. I think everybody would argue that 2 was probably the best set, but the series 1 was also pretty cool too. And so, but the best thing about them was each set had a 5 card hologram add on to the end of the set. And if you could open a pack and get a hologram, it was just the coolest thing. And so kids were bringing in their Marvel cards and trading amongst each other, and everybody was starting to get burned on trades. And then teachers were finding out that there was some friction with the kids, and then principals would get involved, and now no more Marvel cards at school. And we have your binders, and it was the most funnest period of time as a kid in any era to be a part of that, because then you seen the cards. The cards had the little stat blocks on the back of them for each action, or for each character, each superhero, and you like kind of argue yourself, like with your friends, like there's no way that Captain Britain's more, hardcore than Doctor Strange or whatever. I mean, just not that that's a true example, but and so then they'd start tying in the cards to the action figures, and then the action figures made you say, I want to get comic books, and I want to tie it all together, and just like you had to have it all. So, I was buying the cards, and then my party store down the street from me had the comics, and it was just this big. It's no wonder Marvel did so well. It's no wonder that the comics were selling into the millions easily, because kids just either they played outdoors, they played video games, or they just went and bought random stuff to entertain themselves and trade amongst their friends. And so that's how it was for every kid back then. I miss it. It was a really good time. And so from there, I mean, my comic book collection grew, my card collection grew, my toy collection grew, and then the toys got given away, and I'm so mad about that. But now during pandemic, and this is probably a tale that everybody's heard since pandemic, was the collector's bug that reemerged, because we're getting government checks from the government to just stay at home. You're getting paid unemployment to stay home, and you're staying home bored. You're either just gaming with your friends, trying to get on social media, or you're like praying that you don't lose a family member in the midst of all that too. And then there was this random, like when things kind of start lightening up, well, the Pokemon craze came back, the trading card craze came back. For me, it was the action figure craze. I had I went, it was like, I can't remember what month. It was right after pandemic happened, so it was like Marchish, I think, like right within a month, April. And I went to a Walgreens for something, and there was a cool little Transformer War for Cybertron figure there, and it was the one. I can't remember any of your names because I was like hot and heavy at it at the point, but refractor, right? I think it was the camera guy, the guy that turned into the three turned into camera refractor. So there was a refractor, and I bought them. And back in the day, action figures were reasonably priced. They were $5.99 at tops, like so, like $4 to $5 for an action figure, and they were plentiful. And you just have to. The worst thing about buying action figures back in the day was having to choose which one you were going to spend your like hard-earned $5 on. So because you just have to wait and be patient and come back the next week with $5 and get another one. So there was never a stock issue. And then Hasbro, they own all the big properties between Marvel Legends and Transformers and anything that's cool. And so you would go now to a store, or even back in COVID times, action figures were $19.99 plus tax, so about $22 out the door for one figure. That's 3 times, right, or 4 times, however you want to do the math, the value of what it was in the 90s. And for anybody who says that comic books aren't worth paying the $5 or $6 they are to pay for a book now, and I get because it's the thin sheets of paper that is, you're paying an artist and you're paying for all these different, you got to remember that the markup for a comic, and even most of them are still like $4, $3.99, somewhere around that price range. So that's not bad. I mean, I'm just going to throw that argument out there right now for anybody who's turned off buying comic books because of the inflated rate of what they were from the 90s, where they were $1, $1.25. They've only gone up like $3. If you compare that to anything else, that's cheap. So that's my DC Image and Marvel. You can thank me later for putting that kind of information out there that people are turned off by the prices. No, I'm turned off by the price of paying 4 times the amount or 5 times the amount on an action figure now, and it's a lot of money compared to what it was. So, but I got trapped into, I'm bored. I didn't realize how cool I'd seen them. I'd always pay attention to the toy aisles and collectors things and stuff, and thought, geez, that's a lot for that. But then I was like, I always tell myself before pandemic, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to spend that kind of money on something like that. That's just plastic and whatever. And then here I am, like, got to have 3 refractors to build a camera. Oh, look, they got Optimus Prime. Oh, look, and I had in no time. Because I was doing well financially at that point, even though it's pandemic, luckily I was fortunate to be collecting the paycheck and getting, subsidies from the government for being safe 6 feet from each other and all that. So, it was easy for me to go ahead once a week and spend $20 to $40 on 1 or 2 figures to build my collection. And then you got $80 figures and $110 figures and exclusives, and which just like really, really, there's a lot of people in the Hasbro community that were really getting burned, and a lot of people that really getting upset at the competitiveness of how it became this thing where you just have to like fight each other to get something. You have to fight scalpers, which is the people that buy them just to make money off them instead of actually collect them or care for them. And some people will just use the scalping market. They would scalp things to make the money to buy the things they wanted anyway. So, it's just kind of like it was a win-win for them. But yeah, I got into Transformers, and then G.I. Joe came out again with the 6-inch figures, and those were insane just as much. So I had 3 shelves, 3 bookcases, 5-shelf bookcases of Transformers that had accumulated throughout the pandemic, and just like they kept you like moving on it. You had to keep up with it. And then G.I. Joe did the same thing with the classified line, and then all the retro stuff came back: Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, all the stuff that you grew up with in the 80s. They repackaged it for the modern days with the same old everything that they did before, and then Marvel Legends. So, and to me, when I was a kid, the Toy Biz toys were awesome. They sucked really, because in terms of compared to now, I mean, they were great, and they sucked because the playability of them, they were good. they weren't great, but you kind of like make yourself kind of get a little, like you would hype yourself up as a kid if you were trying to play with Toy Biz figures, like I can make this work, and then you'd either risk breaking your toy or you'd be like, yeah, he's just not gonna do that. Like his superpower is restricting him from being posable, whatever, in battle. So you just kind of had to be really imaginative to play with action figures back in the 90s. But now they make them. I mean, and I really took on the toy photography element too, because I've got cameras and stuff that I was like, oh yeah, let's do what like cool toy photographers do and put them in scenes with stuff. And it's just, that's the imagination now, is how cool can you make them look and how realistic can you make the scene around them look. So Marvel Legends have been knocking it out of the box, although they've had some hits and misses with certain, just basically the MCU stuff didn't work out for some things, because you see some movies get the figure adaptation and then they just go for dirt cheap in the third market, like, oh yeah, $5-7 for this because it didn't do well in the theater. And I had a lot of Marvel Legends stuff, and when I was a kid I loved the X-Men toy line, the Toy Biz figures. So I always I wanted like the whole blue team, I wanted the gold team. It was impossible at one point to find Professor X. I mean, I had a friend who somehow got Professor X, and he's like the only kid that I knew had Professor X, the original Toy Biz figure. And people, like my friends, are like, can we just like steal it from him? We were always trying to like shove figures in our pockets, and I'll just borrow it for some time and bring it back, and trying to hope that they forgot that I ever borrowed it, right? So that was a thing in the 90s. And now, like, they've got so many, the Marvel Legends and Star Wars, all those brands, there's a figure for everything. Things that you would just think, like, why did they even need to make a figure for that? But you have to have them all. And so on top of comic collecting, I've posted this recently with certain figures that have hit the shelves, hit the pegs, as they call it. Some of the X-Men 97 stuff's coming out because they're the new season, so they have a reason to make more figures. And that stuff, like, they do the old retro looks, the card stocks, whatever. And it's really, like, it hits you in the feels for sure. Like, you gotta have the stuff that looks like the stuff from when you were in the 90s. And if you just want to hang it on your wall and not take it out of the package, or you want to just re-rip the package and get that feeling all over again, like you just get excited like you were a kid ripping action figures open. But it is really cool what they do with them. So I only bought one figure since here's what happened, right? Pandemic happened. I bought I had 6 bookcases by the time everything was said and done, of stuff that I had, like old figures, retro stuff I was like, the old stuff I had when I was a kid that I rebought again just to have it because I missed having it. And it was just all different toy lines, between old G.I. Joes, old Transformers, new this, new that, Marvel Legends, and then just life hit, because you just never know when things are going to go south. I mean, that's just for any collectible, like whether it's comics, cards, toys, whatever. I mean, there's always a chance that if you get hot and heavy into collecting anything, that you are going to get hit with a roadblock when you least expect it. And that's where I'm trying to, I want to use this podcast as almost like a a public service announcement of, like, just like from my learning experiences, the traps, the pitfalls you don't want to hit, right? Or how to avoid hitting them, or what to do when you do hit them, because people see things on social media, and I am just as bad about this too, because to me, I like collecting things. I like to have them for just the aspect of, I don't know, the dopamine, I guess, having them. But then also, it's like I had an uncle who passed away because of COVID, and it's really sad and fortunate, because him and I were like one of the only 2 people within, a connect the dots group of people that he saw my action figures, and it struck up dialogue that we'd never had about things before. And I think that becomes a thing. It's like it's almost like the coffee table books, but it's not on a table in your coffee table, whatever. It's on your wall, and it's a conversation starter. To me, I'm a camaraderie kind of person. Like, I like the ability to, an event is created and it brings camaraderie. It brings people together. You have fun conversations and you have great times with people. And COVID was definitely one of those times where you couldn't have that, really. I mean, you tried, and it was really a struggle for most people. It was scary for some people. And so to know that I can have a house full of things that strike up conversations where there's never a dull moment. I don't like dull moments. I don't like having that awkward moment of silence with someone that you want to engage with. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I like having that connectability to people. I like to be able to say, like, oh, I dig what you're saying, you dig what I'm saying, I agree with you, and we agree with each other. And that's really cool that I've encountered a person that has the same shared thoughts, because it's just, sometimes you feel like in this world you don't have enough people that relate to you. And in the world, in the era of the internet, it's not easy to, like, it's got to be hard to not find someone to connect with anymore, because you can easily stumble across about a dozen people in a minute that you relate to, but they could be in other states and or in other countries, and you never even have that chance to have that physical impact with one another to be able to say, yeah, this is cool, we're sharing a moment. So to be able to find that in your own backyard is really something unique and special, and it takes having to go to do some legwork to get out and talk to people and go to events that relate to you and other people and build those bonds and make that network with people. And so I like creating that atmosphere. I like being able to engage with people and find relations with people that it all makes sense, and so I like having these things. And so pandemic hits and got all these things, and then life takes a wild turn. My wife had a physical situation. She had a surgery she had to undergo for, I'll just throw it out. She broke her ankle, and it sucked. It really, and I say it like it happened to me. It sucked way worse for her because she broke her ankle, not me. She did. And so that's a huge, you'd never expect that kind of thing to ever happen to anybody that you are sharing a house with and a life with and a family with, and it sucks. And that's what the point of being, having that the closeness to someone is. You have to look out for each other and do what you got to do for each other. So, and I also made changes on my own merit. I had taken a different change in work. Things just after pandemic just didn't. I think a lot of people got in this like vibe of maybe this job isn't for me after seeing how pandemic treats work, or the vibe at work or whatever, or things just change, right? And so it was a growing process for me as well. And the change in my in my respect, I guess, whatever happened with me, it changed me for the worse, but then in the better in the long run. But at that time, it's a lifestyle change, right? And if you're going to collect comics, if you're going to collect cards, if you're going to collect anything, you have to mentally prepare yourself for how invested you want to get into whatever it is you're collecting. And you have to prepare yourself for what happens, worst case scenario. Like, what happens if my lifestyle changes or a tragic event takes place or something sets me back. And you have to know your limits. You have to know your boundaries. You have to know when like a time, it's kind of like gambling. I mean, you have to know when to stop, right? So it could be kind of addicting. I mean, collecting is it's like hunting. I mean, we'd call it toy hunting, we call it figure hunting, call it card hunting. It's the thrill. I mean, to me, I've equated it to me being like Indiana Jones. Like, I get why Indiana Jones does what he does, right? Because he has all these relics of stuff that he's scoured the earth for. And you'd figure like, okay, dude, that's enough, right? Like you don't need any more ancient artifacts that are risking your life for. And then you're like, but here's another movie. So he must have really needed that relic that he almost got rolled over by a big giant boulder for. And so that's like the mindset that collectors get into. You know, you don't understand, it doesn't make sense, but into their minds, in my mind, it makes sense because there's some sort of reward to it somehow, whether it's personal engagement with others or just knowing you have an investment value to it, or it's something you want to pass to someone, or whatever. I mean, I think that every element there relates to everybody, right? So I had to make the difficult choice, and I wouldn't say difficult. I had to make the logical choice. I had to do what was best. That wasn't going to set myself and my young child and my wife any further back. I wasn't going to jeopardize a whole lot of I guess a whole lot of the future and mental stability over a bunch of things I just purchased on a whim. I mean, you got to look at it that way. These things, whether anything, it can come and go. I mean, it may change in value as it comes and goes, and you'd be surprised what certain things either up in value and go down in value. I had, when I purged, basically is what I'm getting at, is I purged my whole entire collection, and it was just to wipe out some debt. I mean, I was just like, I just don't want to be dealing with this whole constant like worry of, oops, you know, like we're going to get behind. So you have to get in front of it before you get behind it, right? And so and it really is like when you have a burden that starts weighing you down, something that just, whether it's whether it's financial or mental, you start to sit there, that becomes your main focus, right? And the things that you want to enjoy don't become enjoyable anymore because you start focusing on what's making them unenjoyable, which is the stressors that we all have. I mean, and don't ever beat yourself up over life's challenges, because we all have them, and some people have them way worse. Some have them not as worse, but they have them, and they're always going to create a ripple into your flow of life. And so you have to prioritize knowing that physical things are just there as like to remind you of a reward. You can reward yourself however you want to reward yourself. That's fine. But if trying to chase a reward is putting you back mentally and financially and physically even, then it's not worth the reward, I think. That's my opinion. But you can make it worthwhile if you can readjust and realign your priorities. So I purged easily, I mean, a lot of things. Legos, I purged. Hot Wheels, I purged. My figure collection, I held on to the comic collection because to me that had actually, that like was grandfathered into the deal, right? Like there was only one part of the comic collection that went, and it was my Amazing Spider-Man stuff that it wasn't even like, some of it was part of my original collection, but most of it was just stuff I had started kind of like, yeah, I'll start buying that. I'm bored. I need something to keep me entertained. So let's just keep hunting books for the, vintage books. And I had some really decent books in there that I got at good deals. Now, what I got out of it, I was fine with. I may have lost some money on it. That's, hey, the purpose was it achieved what I needed out of it. Right. And so I ended up, okay, now I got 5 empty bookcases to fill with books that were somewhere else, and I have a lot more room because I just started looking at it, and I'm like, I'm looking at it, and it's just there, and it's just money looking at me. Basically, to me at that point, it just started becoming like, you can piece it together, 20, 25, 40, 45, it become like an auctioneer in your own head of how much is just sitting there staring at you, and if you're not enjoying it, then what's the point of having it? You can always come back to it. I mean, that's kind of how I'm trying to put a silver lining in all this, is that I circled around when I got back stable again, feeling financially stable, feeling stable enough to where I can pace myself. And, there's the old saying, and I got a guy that I listened to on a different podcast, it's all about collecting, that had said this, and everybody says this. it's not a race, it's a marathon. Okay. You don't just go in there and exert all your energy into the first mile when you've got 10 miles to go. You pace yourself and you know your limits. And I've still got bad habits of saying, you know what, I think I can double down this week on a couple things like splurge purchases or whatever. But I still haven't, I've gotten this far in life where I have not put myself into like, hey, I have to file Chapter 11. So that's a good thing. I haven't had to go bizarrely wild with, oh, well, time to repo the car, time to lose the house. I've never allowed myself to get to that point. If I knew I was ever getting to that point, then it's time to start prioritizing what needs to be here, right? And getting back to that. But I'm also trying to just also be more balanced. My GI Joe classified line, I found, I mean, you'd be surprised. When this stuff was hot and heavy, it was ridiculously expensive. Most people also got in the same boat that I did, and there's a lot of people surprisingly got in that boat because they were in the same mindset as pandemic buying. And now you go on eBay and some of that stuff, you'd be surprised how cheap it is. So that's the silver lining about collecting action figures. There's always going to be a time when you get surprised when you find a good deal on something. You're like, why is that going for so cheap? And it might not be as conditioned as what you want it to be, like new or mint. But you if you just want it for having it and you don't care about the condition, you'll find it you just have to. It's patience. It's a matter of just waiting it out and just okay. Try to budget yourself to say, that's a $50 item I want, and I can't find it at 50, but I have a bunch of $5 items I can get in the meantime, and just wait it out. It's a battle of fruition to score something, and sometimes you can just say, that's like that is a reward item that I have to earn that, right? You have to. I got a bonus at work, or I got a tax return or something, and now it's time to get that item that's been like on my list of go-tos. I just was like, it was too easy for me to fall into the trap of it's there and I have the money and boom, I'll get it. And I learned a lot from doing that it's like, I don't, I reaccumulated what I got from my GI Joe collection. I had some wrestling figures too. I pretty much kind of got what I got out of those. Again, what I sold before, I went and just patiently waited and watched. I mean, eBay was like my friend at that point. I mean, some of them were already from eBay to begin with. So it's just being patient, waiting it out, studying the market. And, that's true advice from a collector to collectors, is just be very, very patient and diligent with yourself and prioritize, know your limits. I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, really, if I can go back 5-6 years now, whatever, and like recondition myself to be a better, a little bit more, but I mean, I was probably still have the same amount of stuff, but I would have said, I would have told myself 6 years ago, don't let your wife break her ankle, and it would have made things a lot easier. But I think that I'm not bashing on her for having that situation. It's completely unavoidable. Things like that happen. You can't allow, I would never allow that to be a reason why, like, it's not her fault that I had a collection and I decided to part with that collection. That was me, and I did that for the sake of all of us, and that's what you got to do. You just got to be. That's people are. I mean, people are a priority more than physical random things that you put on shelves. So take care of one another. Your family comes first. Your wife, your kids, your parents, siblings, whatever. If you're gonna sit there and ruin their life or try to put them in a I wouldn't say ruin their life. I would say make their life seem less valuable in favor of something that is just literally can like go from $20 to $10 to $30 back to $5, then you need to really rethink life. So yeah, that's my
I've always wanted to do a podcast about this topic because there's a lot of collectors out there, and I encounter so many of you on my TikToks and my Instagrams, and I love your content. I really do. I admire that you have such awesome things that you've accumulated. And a lot of you are lucky you've accumulated it when it was of value, like at face value, market value. It was like, here's a bunch of $1.25 comic books that I bought when they were $1.25. I'm not spending $5 to $8 to $10 or $20 per book now. I was fortunate enough to have that and kept it. And I am fortunate for my comic collection to have held on to them because I'm shocked when I redig through some of those issues that I'm like, wow, I can't believe I forgot that I had this, or, and it's not saying you shouldn't sell your comic books or whatever if you get in a pinch, but they are really reminiscent of a lot of things. You can, it just, especially if you have a huge bulk comic book lot or a collection that it was like your childhood collection. It does have a lot of sentimental value for the sake of just, it's like a history piece, It's very reflective of the times. It may bring back some really cool memories, and you'd be surprised that if you had a large collection, you didn't look at it for 30 years, like I did for a chunk of time or chunks of time. You'd be surprised, like, wow, I didn't realize I had this, and some of it's like, you'd be surprised how much of it is like they're really gem items now. They're really hard to find, or like big ticket items. I had Venom Lethal Protector 1, the pink or whatever, the pinkish red holofoil cover, and I never thought of it being of value because it was just so readily available when I was a kid in the 90s, and now that's become like a sought after book. I didn't think I knew Venom was an awesome villain. I thought it was weird they gave him his own series when I was a kid, because I just thought, why are you giving the bad guy a series? But I get it now. I didn't get it then, and he was kind of the anti-hero at that point. He wasn't much of Venom or like a villain like he was when he was trying to kill Spider-Man every other issue. So they kind of turned him around into this thing, and just like the movies, and because of the movies becoming popular amongst Venom fans, now the books, especially issue 1, which everybody has to have in their collection, and I sold mine when I sold my Spider-Man stuff too. So, and I'm back to having that Spider-Man stuff. So that's like the full circle moment here is you can always reattain this stuff. Just prioritize yourself. You prioritize what is meaningful to you in your life. And yeah, so that's my PSA to people listening to this podcast is these are all my tips for proper investing into collecting. And so yeah, that's I think that kind of sums up most of this episode, because I don't really have much else to go on, and this is the longest episode to date out of 3 episodes. So that's how cool collecting is. It can be a very talkative thing. So until next time, again, follow my social media accounts, TikTok and Instagram. For right now, I don't have anything else other than that. So if someone named Chuck the Comic Guy tries to hit you up on Facebook, it's not me until I say it's me. So it's definitely not me. And wants money or Apple gift cards or iTunes gift cards or anything like that, then or Roblox or Bucks or whatever. It's not me. I would never ask you for iTunes cards or Robux. I would just tell you to just, meet me in a corner alley somewhere and hand me $20. And I would never do that either, not through social media. So X that from the record. So anyway, Chuck the Comic Guy, Instagram, TikTok, those are my only 2 accounts. I don't ever try to communicate with people on there except through comments and likes and just, whatever. So thanks again for listening. I appreciate you all and enjoy the show. And until next time.
Let's cut out of here.